Hey everybody!
Hello.
Welcome to
Hello.
Monday Night Live in Lexington, you guys, and hey to Instagram. Hey to both pages of my Facebook. Thanks for joining us tonight. I've got the professional page and the personal page going at the same time. If you get on here, you won't be able to comment on the professional page, but you can on the personal page. So if you want to join in this live chat, hop over to my personal page and make a comment. We want to know how you guys feel about the topics that we're going to cover tonight. And as you can see, we have our special guest back at the Shifu Careaga. And we're going to be talking about a lot of different things tonight. But the first thing I want to announce is we have a new group.
Well, the page. So
a page, yeah.
Yeah, the Mists of Time group, you know, the electric universe research has gone so swimmingly. And so I feel pretty strong about the plasma cosmogony. In the time that we've had the Mists of Time, well, just in general, the falling electric universe, in the time since we've been doing these shows,
right, and this
dark
is
matter
show
failed.
number 7.
Right, and so dark matter officially failed, and there's a lot of dominoes that fall with that. So plasma cosmogony providing the Occam's razor, the simplest answer to get the most information. So I've broken that out now. There's Cosmogony Corner. It's going to be a page where hard research, mostly papers, articles, are going to be going on. And so the Mists of Time group will have a little bit of electric universe, but primarily we'll continue on with the archaeology, so giants and Atlantis and UFOs and
so fun stuff.
The fun stuff that no one wants to talk about, but research as far as all right. And the media, they don't want to let us talk about it.
Well, that's why we have Facebook Live
that's why we have.
and YouTube Live and YouTube so that we can talk about stuff like this.
That's right.
So those of you that have any thoughts about this or any questions about this, I want you to type it in the comments. I don't know how long my voice will last, but Shifu bought me some good tea for it, and I have my Ricolas. Tell them about this tea.
Pongahai, yeah, Pongahai is interesting. Pull one of those out so they can see it. So we can order these for people at the clinic, and you boil water, and then by the time you put the little seed in, let you see that. And then as it's in there and the water cools, it actually flowers and opens up. And basically, it's pretty good stuff as far as treating laryngitis. It works very, very well. And it doesn't taste too bad. It's got an earthy taste, but it's not too rooty.
Yeah. But I love herbal teas, so this is going to be perfect for me.
And the water doesn't turn too dark. It's a nice
it's kind of a
nice honey.
Nice and herbal.
Yeah, it's definitely. And then, of course, you can always add honey. Lemongrass, anything else you want to add to it? So Shifu is the owner of Blue Lotus Acupuncture, and you have locations in Elizabethtown no Elizabethtown, Lexington, and Berea. Yeah.
You've got an associate in
we'll still refer to her. Yeah.
Okay, so hey to Jim Pioski and Sam and Paula Boland. Thanks for joining us tonight. So let's get into our topic.
Great.
Yeah.
So we're heading towards discussing Zep Tepi. And but I realized when I left last time that I'm not sure if I impressed on people the full import of talking about the three most important cataclysms. We're going to get the Zep Tepi and what ended the Eden and the good life. But the Venus and Mars cataclysms, I want people to understand what level of terror we're talking about here. Some rabbinical sources say that 9 in 10 Hebrews died just in the Passover event, just in the plague of darkness.
Right. That was massive.
It was massive, and then more died in that didn't reach across the Red Sea when a thunderbolt struck, and then the seas fell and actually washed over. So not everybody made it out, and I think this is really important that people understand how powerful. When we talk about electromagnetism, we're talking about something that is 1,000 trillion times stronger than gravity that's holding you down right now. Of course, actually, gravity is just a model that is electromagnetism, but when you have 10 of these plagues back to back, the Jews just said, "Oh, well, this is it. We're leaving. We're leaving."
Any left.
Well, it really was very difficult times. During that plague of darkness, people couldn't even see to get water and food. They would light fires that they couldn't see the fire from a few feet away.
Wow.
And that's just, and then there was the choking dust. At one point in Samaria, in one of the previous Ragnaroks, I don't think it's the same one, but it could be the Exodus. I'd have to look at the Sumerian tablets. But in one of them, it was so bad that parents were eating their children. It was just awful.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, the people were completely driven to the brink, and there was a displacement of people all around the world. These sea peoples, they left their homes and they invaded these other, because everybody thought it would be better somewhere else. The truth is, it was terrible everywhere.
Yeah.
And these events were so powerful that you had mountains toppling and or springing out of the ground. You had the Gobi Sea that was lifted and that dumped into China, and so it was created these inundating waters. You had massive flood events. Now, this is the Great Flood. This isn't the Deluge. So the Great Flood event is previous to and associated with the Venus phenomenon. And when I say Venus, I mean the planet Venus, the comet Venus, but we're also talking about what's called Loki in one culture. And then when Loki came close and finally got close enough to the Earth, becoming Hel, or Hela, if you follow the Marvel comics. And then you have the discussion of Typhon, which is like this giant serpent that Zeus battles.
Right.
So we're talking a cataclysm that was on an order beyond the Star Wars. I mean, it's literally cosmic level power going on around, and they're just little humans. And of course, people turn to spirituality, to God, and they created religions. But they already had some religions associated with the Age of the Gods. But now they have these experiences. It's no wonder that the Jews thought that they were the chosen people, because everybody else is being wiped out.
Everybody's being wiped
Everybody's
out.
being wiped out.
So for those of you that don't know a lot about cosmology or astrology and things like that, there's a YouTube video that is on my timeline right now that you can go back and watch this evening. I think it should be about 3 or 4 posts back. But at the end of the show, I can go ahead and put another link in the comment section here so you can watch it. It will help you understand a little bit more of what we're talking about. And let's see, we may have a comment here. Hey to Wes.
Samantha, I like oolong as well. Try pu'er tea if you've never had it.
And let's see, Helen has a comment. Hey, hello guys. I was shown in a giant flying saucer, and I was lucky enough to get a photo of it. Everyone is amazed at the pic. I seem to be the only one who saw it. We would love for you to post that in the comments section, Helen, if you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey to Christopher Maggard, Jenny, Christy, Sandra, Katrina. Hey to Rolando. Kisses, Rolando. And Marion, Susan, Yasmin Jadoon. Hey, girl, how are you? And Mary Lee, how are you tonight? Autumn Law, Karen Votts. That's a shout out to my friend Karen Votts. And hey to Kelly Simpson, thanks for joining. So yeah, any of you that want a little bit more knowledge about this, we'll get that link posted after the show.
So now, skipping to the Mars event, now we're past the age of the gods, we're into the age of the heroes. And people have to understand that Mars was, Ares, as it were, was unable to defeat Athena, okay? And it was Zeus that sent Athena away. So there was an electrical discharge, and again, Athena was cast off by the planet Jupiter.
Right.
Now, Mars, being this hero who fought with Athena to save mankind, at some point kept circling back closer to us. And this is like in the negative 685 BC, time period. And at that time, this big red planet, and then it was bringing these red clouds of dust, it initiated a worldwide obsession with war. Every culture around the world, just about.
Which Mars does.
Right. And it does brings up a bloodlust.
That's Mars.
The whole world. And so you think of cultures like the Vikings. Why were they that way? Because their god, they adhered to this idea of the warrior spirit and helping you to reach heaven, because you have Mars, seemingly coming around and creating these destructions and really not caring about any of the people that worship and just doing what it does. And it's just huge electrical events. And we've seen now through the research, and you've been following that, the passage of power from the Father to the Son, from Cronus to Zeus, and then from Zeus to Apollo, or from Odin to Thor, is about this electrical energy. It's even in the Zoroastrian gods. This electrical power, this trident, this Vajra is another way of calling it. It's a thunderbolt. And there's only one reference to thunderbolts in all of the Bible. So if you go search King James and look for thunderbolt, and you'll see what it is talking about.
But they're all correlations of this transfer of energy.
Yeah. And even the Tao.
In each society.
Yes.
And it's all the same.
Yeah, and I was just teaching the boys in Kung Fu tonight. Tao was literally a plasma trail that was left. Of course, there's again Typhon, this cloud that was up in it was a comet tail. Probably what happened was Venus wasn't born from Jupiter as much as Hera, the previous gas giant, as it passed through Jupiter. Then another smaller piece came out, and it was hot, and there was all this gas trail behind it. And so we never hear about Hera afterwards. Right. Athena is the big deal after that. Yeah. And so, and then the two-face, whether you're talking about Loki's two-face, because sometimes Loki's female, not only male. So these events that happened, they were taken different ways by different cultures, but pretty much the same basic story. And whether it's Nordic lineages, or Egyptian wars between brothers, or the Greek passing from father to son, and the twins. And
you can see all the correlations.
It's all
there.
Correlated.
Let me check for any questions. Hey to Natalie and Corey. Nice to see you guys.
Yeah, please, guys, if you have questions.
If you have any questions, or you just want to make a comment, just type it away. We're ready for you.
So, it gets us thinking about the Great Flood event and the Deluge. Now, the difference is the Great Flood, of course, there was a lot of storms created by the comet tail, created by all this energy in the air, as well as us passing through. And so these different plagues that were happening, and there was a lot of energy in the air. The difference is with the Deluge is what my research seems to be showing is the moon passing close and destroying the previous moon that was here, according to Sumerian texts and according to South American tribes. And I don't remember the names. It's in Fingerprints of the Gods, but I could get you the names some of the time.
It's fascinating how, there are records of all of this.
Yeah.
Even if the society doesn't have a written language, some of those societies that didn't have a written language still had some kind of documentation or some kind of record of these cataclysms.
Well, they would say most of them would sing it orally for all these years. And so the moon passing by the Earth and then becoming entrained with the Earth, and that's why it's facing us, it's possible the moon is Janus, because it has two different faces. So Janus, of course, disappears as an important god in the pantheon. Why? Because, the moon stopped attacking.
Yeah.
But as it passed, it would have created large tectonic displacements and a true deluge, where we're talking 1,000-foot, 2,000-foot waves that overtake all the land and then, of course, slowly recede. Joy says she loves Fingerprints of the Gods. Yeah, it's a great book.
It is. It is good.
And then, so when we talk about the tectonics, I want people to understand, when you look at, if you look at an orange, the crust is not even as thick as the peel of an orange, not even the thin types of peels of the orange. The crust is very, very thin. It's more like when you allow melted wax to cool a little bit, and it forms a real thin layer on the top.
Yeah.
And then if you keep it warm, you can push that around. That's how our crust is. It's very, very loose. So if you have enough of a force, especially electrical force, you could drag it around. And what I'm playing with now is the thought that, this is again a Velikovskian idea, but based on Egyptian sources, that the Earth was actually north and south, and the Chinese are obsessed with this idea that the true north is south and the true south is north.
Oh.
And so, why would Antarctica be, quote, at the bottom of the Earth? Possibly because for most of the time it was facing the polar configuration, and then when everything shifted this way and something pulled, most of the land masses moved towards the northern hemisphere. And when you have a shift like that, there's a good chance that it wasn't that Atlantis sank as much as it was run over.
Right. So here we get into our Atlantean.
Yeah, almost. We're almost there.
Almost.
Let's talk about the Younger Dryas. Let's talk about Eden. What I want people to understand is that most cultures talk about a golden period, a golden time, whether people were naked or whatever. The electric universe people, they believe we were inside the plasma sheath of the brown dwarf star, which was Saturn. And then as that plasma was siphoned off towards probably Jupiter, as their relationship, they were constantly circulating, but Jupiter was getting more. That plasma sheet starts shifting. Suddenly, there appears all of the various planets. So there were different layers. It's a double layer, and then suddenly that disappears. Now you can see all the moons, and you can see the whole pantheon of the angels and the gods, and they're circulating around these planets, both Jupiter and Saturn. Now you have two sets of gods. And that's what we see in Nordic mythology. You have two sets of gods, and they go to war with each other, a so-called clash of the titans.
Yes, here's where we get the clash of the titans.
So at this time, when you have the clash of the titans, then you have a potential opportunity for a moon, namely our moon now, to be slung out. And that's what the Tiamat story in the Sumerian legends talks about. And Jupiter sends a character, which we call Marduk, to Earth and actually to watch us over, becomes the Watcher, and destroying everything and causing this cataclysmic event. So not just a comet, but several comets, like little chunks of rock flying about, striking the Earth, tearing, apparently in the story, splits Tiamat's skull open. I assume that's either the Atlantic Rift, which goes all the way up and down the Atlantic, or the African Rift, which is slowly pulling that continent apart. Just depends on where you think Eden was. We don't know exactly where Eden was. It's definitely Middle East.
It's all conjecture,
area.
but
it's conjecture.
There are certain things that we can go.
We know that the Sahara at that time, at 12,000 years ago, the Sahara was grasslands with giant lakes, and I mean lakes bigger than Lake Superior.
Right.
And they're all buried now in sand. There's a question: where did all the sand come from? So, definitely Saudi Arabia. If you look at the satellite, Saudi Arabia's desert and the Gobi Desert and most of the Sahara, they don't look as old as the Nevada Desert.
Right.
They don't look as old as the Mojave Desert. So when we think about where did all this sand come from, it wasn't just the grass just turned to 1,000 feet of sand. That sand had to be dumped here. It had to be, or it had to come from the bottom of the ocean, one of the two.
Right.
It's possible it came from the bottom of the ocean in those deluges, but something of great important power had to create those events. And the shifting of those plate tectonics around is not just that the Earth is expanding. It is expanding, but that's a very slow rate, generally speaking. It comes in fits and spurts, depending on how much supernova energy arrives to the Earth. But the Earth's expansion is not going to cover what we're talking about.
Right.
It has to be
Something
a world in collision. And I want people to understand the book Worlds in Collision is an academic piece. It's full of citations. Every page has citations. That's part of what made the mainstream so mad about it.
Yeah.
Because he did the research that nobody else really wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really
And it's a great read.
Yeah.
Let's do a couple shout outs. Hey to Ricky Elkins, Ethel, Rebecca, and Tara. Nice to see you guys tonight. If you have any questions or you just want to make a comment, please feel free to do so. So where do you think Atlantis?
Right. So this leads us to Zep Tepi, right? And we're going to call it Zep Tepi. Every culture had their own version of Eden. Okay. But let's talk about the most likely, is from what I'm seeing, is that Atlantis was a pandemic, a whole world phenomenon of continents that disappeared. Probably the largest one that disappeared was the, quote, Lemuria continent in the Indian Ocean, and the Indonesian is probably what went down the most. But I would say that Atlantis in the Atlantic Ocean was large enough and probably did sustain a contemporary culture to that of the Göbekli Tepe culture. And these cultures being also descendants, probably, or at least influenced by the culture that created the Bosnian pyramids. And they were talking a lot of different time period here. We're talking, 12,000 years of difference in time period from each other. And in that kind of time, it would be very easy for a culture that had been relatively okay, doing well without cataclysm inside this plasma sheath, with basically no major seasonal changes, just wet and dry, with a purple sky, a beautiful kind of an indigo sky. Remember, folks, that the sun puts out mostly green light, so these plants reflecting green doesn't make sense evolutionally. So when you have this nice time, you can have thousands of years to develop. It is possible that the Sphinx is 36,000 years old. And it goes not to the last age of Leo, but the previous age of Leo. It's totally possible. And these cultures would have been easily able to follow the birds. Simple lodestones. You can just take a lodestone, put it on a leaf, and if it's floating, you can even make your own compass. I don't believe the Chinese were the first to invent that. And none of the research seems to indicate that we're finding that out. There seems to be more of a trend towards the deeper we're willing to dig in the earth, finding older and older things. And that makes sense because, Troy was even buried in more than 30 feet of mud. It just took somebody who was willing to go look for it. The mainstream would have never done that.
If we were willing to go look for it, we would probably find it, but nobody wants to find it.
Well, I went to Dr. Laura Little's presentation in Arkansas, and she straight up said because people had been looting a shipwreck nearby, they've closed the Bimini Row. Not even academics can get licenses to go right now to the Bimini Row. I know, it's a little bit coincidental considering they've just found all those plinths on the ground.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Some of those plinths look natural, but some of them do look like columns. So it is completely possible, and I believe.
I think that was a little convenient.
It is a little convenient, yeah.
Hey to Paulette Frost, thanks for joining tonight. So now I know this is hard for you to conceptualize, but some people don't even know what Zep Tepi is. Right. So tell us what Zep Tepi is.
Zep Tepi is the Egyptian word for the first time. And when I say the first time, I mean that according to the classics, whether it's China, India, or Egypt, there was no time. There was no measurement of time. There was no, the only way to know of a shift in day was the movement of the crescent of light that was reflecting off of Kronos or Saturn as it went around our sun. And we're not even sure that was our sun. It could have been also Jupiter. It's hard to know. Nobody knows anything for sure. But this first time was comparatively a golden age. I would say it's a golden age in that people all believe the same thing.
Yes, and all different societies, there's always the first golden time, the first time. But
I want people to understand, how we have so much strife in our culture? Because we're free. We're allowed to disagree with each other, and we frequently do, all the time, sometimes just for fun. At that time, everyone would believe in the gods and God, and everyone would believe in energies and in sprites and spirits, and everyone would, people didn't get along, though. I mean, people understand that. It wasn't that kind of golden era.
Right.
And there wasn't, electricity, and probably wasn't flying cars and things like that. The technology they had was definitely advanced. There was undoubtedly a lot of machining.
And we can see that.
Engineering from every bit of, we talk about the Great Pyramid versus the Bosnian Pyramid. The Bosnian Pyramid is actually a mountain that has been plastered on 3 of its sides with man-made concrete, and then tunnels made from within it, probably so they could go in, based on Graham Hancock's research and other researchers, so that they could take hallucinogens and go in and experience the spirit world, is probably what it's for. So I reckon if we open up those chambers, we're probably going to find a lot of megalithic or Stone Age drawings, plasma. Probably going to see the plasma shapes that we see here in Kentucky. And in Nazca and everywhere else, we're probably going to see those same things.
Right, because they're all over the world.
Right. That concrete is more of a mudstone. It's kind of more like fluid, but it has been laid up in these big slabs. And there's these pathways that have been made. Totally amazing. And it does, a lot
of people don't know about the Bosnian.
I know, there's actually a whole complex of them.
Yeah.
And of course, one is more famous than the other ones, but they have all these alignments that are way beyond coincidental. So clearly the site was chosen for a reason.
Yeah.
The Great Pyramid's a whole different animal. We're talking about something that was first, an area was cleared, then it was leveled to a ridiculous precision that they still argue. They don't know exactly how it was. There's an argument, and even when they make a good argument that involves water or levels, people will come up with reasons why that wouldn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And then they put all these huge stones on them that have ridiculous alignments. I mean, the height of the pyramid, the angle of the pyramid, the perimeter of the pyramid are all matching up to the Earth. Certain alignments to certain stars, the North Pole, pi, the diameter of the Earth, the angle of declination. I mean, everything about the Great Pyramid has been pre-designed and probably took hundreds of years to get it completely planned out. I doubt that it was built first and the other two were built after. I'd say they went the other way. Just common sense, right? You would make the smaller one and go bigger. But, mainstream, right, in mainstream Egyptology, they go the other way. They take the big one and then they made it smaller to kind of, it's a very Confucian-like idea, like venerate your grandfather by making your pyramid small. But probably none of them were made for tombs.
Yeah.
There's just no proof of them being tombs. So we never found anything. And I'm going to say on record, they open that great void, they're not going to find a tomb. They're going to find another chamber, probably a lot like the Queen's chamber. There's probably some kind of resonance frequency associated with those chambers. And I'd say that probably why Zayuwas doesn't want to open.
I feel like they're vibrational.
Right, exactly.
They're used for something vibrational, some kind of vibrational harmonics, like you said. Hey to Becky Marie and Michael Robichaud, thanks for joining tonight. If y'all have any questions, just let us know.
So,
yeah.
Let's go back to Atlantis for a second, where I want people to understand. I'm not saying that Atlantis wasn't special. It might have been the wisest that we've ever been, where we were still innocent, but we were also learned, and we shared knowledge around the world. Maybe arriving in Australia, maybe even New Zealand. From accounts of the Maori, there are these legends of people that had been there for thousands of years ahead of them.
Yeah.
But what I have not found is any kind of special evidence that says that it was like alien-like or even as advanced as what we have. That being said, there's a lot of problems with where we've gone because of science and because of the Industrial Revolution and these things that have warped our sense of family and our sense of society and our sense of right and wrong. And a lot have all been melded. And again, that goes back to when Mars became the Scarface tyrant and the age of war, we went from an age of heroes to like truly an age of tyranny. Yeah. We haven't really left that technically. And we all seem to be expecting the world to end again. Like we're investing heavily. Everybody,
what do you see? Every 5 years, there's projected another cataclysm.
Yeah, well, I think that I think it's every year now.
It's probably going to happen, but I don't know.
Well, it's true.
Project it.
Arwen was talking about where they were learning with the kids about that island, Santorini, and it suddenly exploded. I mean, the Earth is constantly shifting. And there's no doubt that there will be a 9-pointer at some point. Maybe even the New Madrid could open up. But the difference now is I don't have any research, aside from their prediction of a Planet 9, I don't have anything concrete to say that we are under a current threat of a world in collision. And there's a good chance, even if there's a Planet
unless 9, we do it to ourselves.
That's what I'm worried about.
That's what I'm worried about.
The Planet 9 thing, Planet 9 might pass all the way up by the asteroid belt. Now, it doesn't mean there wouldn't be an effect. But as far as we know, Planet 9 might have crashed into Jupiter, and that's what set off this whole thing. We honestly don't have enough data to freak out every time. I mean, there's a government program. They want to actually, I'm not kidding, folks, they want to drill into Yellowstone. No. I'm not kidding. They want to do, there's geologists, they want to drill into it, and they think they're going to save it by letting out the gases. And there's a whole lake over there.
It's such a bad idea.
Where Lake Victoria, they are actually getting some of the methane out, but it's not enough. Right? It's just one vent. So they actually want to mine that and get it out. I'm going, well, that's just going to release it all quicker. And there's a whole city of millions of people that would be susceptible to that gas bubble.
One thing is for sure, whenever man starts to mess with stuff,
I agree.
disaster happened.
I agree. And Velikovsky's point was that we are doing it, especially in the 20th century. You know, he wrote Worlds in Collision in 1950, so he'd seen 2 world wars. And that's something that, you know, I can't say. And you can't. We didn't see the World War.
No.
So he saw 2 of these world wars. And so it impressed upon him
the
concern.
Going.
Right. And he's the one who coined the phrase mankind and amnesia. Graham Hancock borrowed that phrase to describe, like, why are we forgetting what happened at Tiwanaku and Teotihuacan and, you know, in Egypt and in Australia, these events that were so cataclysmic, so huge, so life-altering that whole religions were created.
Yeah, but not a lot of people know. Like, this stuff isn't taught in the schools, and so no one.
That's
our
true.
Culture is not learning that these things are repeatable.
And even in the churches where they talk about the Exodus, they don't really get into how big and important. I mean, it's kind of a glossed over kind of thing because everybody saying, well, how's it possible? Let me tell you something. The plague of, like, rodents and bugs, that was all around the world. They were all saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
All around the world, they were saying there was a plague of these animals, and I would assume they were leaving one area and migrating through another area to try and get away from these cataclysms.
Because, you know, there's records of all this.
There's records, and that's the thing. We don't trust them, and yet I wonder why, because they didn't have profits, they didn't have stock markets, they didn't really have any reason to lie. I mean, it was these people's professional job. Even the Dogon, to at least to the 20th century, I haven't looked lately, they considered it so important that if their astronomer was touched by another person, they would kill the astronomer. So they wanted to keep them separate because they wanted to keep it sacred. They wanted to keep it accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of obsession belies a trauma, a PTSD, a need to control. And we have, as a culture, a real big problem where we need to control every little thing. We are afraid the banana trees won't mate. I mean, we think that we've got to manage the hillside's coming down, plant kudzu, you know, and it's a real problem.
You knew, I mean, see what a disaster kudzu was.
Exactly.
We have to stop.
We have to stop,
meddling.
but we're not going to stop, according to Velikovsky, until we acknowledge, as a collective, the abuse of the gods, of we're not talking about demigods that you can pray to, and there's no, like, if there are pagans out there, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about planets. I'm talking about powerful events that totally earth-shattering events, literally
those events in the heavens affect everything that goes on our planet.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And that's one of the reasons why I do the daily astrological outlook on my Facebook page. I do today's planetary influences, because the planets influence our behaviors, our emotions, and it somehow, to me, is easier to handle a bad mood if you know that the planetary influences might be behind
Well,
it.
it's nice. It's like if a woman, pardon me, but if a woman's having her cycle, she knows that she's going to be more likely to bite her husband's head off. It's the same. If you know that the moon is full or the new moon is happening, you know, then you can do something about it. And just because they're far away doesn't mean there's no influence, because there's going to be some quantum entanglement. There's going to be charge. Which planet is it that we're still, like, we have still, like, I know it's Venus we do, but I think it's Saturn. I think even to this day, astrologically, there is a certain mathematical correlation between the
Saturn.
Earth's. And there's the same thing happens with the other gas giants and their moons. And so this kind of connection can't be underplayed, and it certainly can't be underplayed if we have a subconscious fear. The comets, like, as a kid, I never understood, like, what's the obsession with comets. I did like Shoemaker Levy 9, that was really cool, and the explosions of which demonstrated the power of electromagnetic explosions, because that wasn't an impact, that was an explosion. It was bigger than the Earth, but the comet wasn't. But this obsession with comets and the fear, it's just this thing. Well, now we know the obsession was, you know, Venus, and then all the Valkyrie following, you know, as the pantheon behind. And when you look at the Carolina Bays, they're not all facing the same direction. They're, you know, the different ovals are going different directions. I mean, whole areas were being pelted by these, which was translated in the Bible, if you want to look, as hail. It wasn't actually hail, it was the brimstone. It was raining.
Well, but then they said hail and brimstone. So let me check our board here, and let's check our time. We
There
are
we go. We're
past
almost there.
time.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
One last
No,
point,
sure.
and then we'll wrap
Well,
it
I don't
up.
have any point. I think we got through them all.
Did we get it through them all?
Yeah, I mean,
Congratulations.
There you go.
Yay. Thanks for joining us tonight. We will have more. January is episode number.
Well, I think
episode number 8.
I think what we were going to do was we were going to start talking about the Sumerians and the Nibiru and everything, all that fun stuff.
The Nibiru and the Sumerians coming up in January. All right, you guys. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Tell them how you like the taste of it.
I like the taste of it. It doesn't need anything in it at all. I like the taste.
Yeah, I don't think it's that bad. You can add honey if you want.
Oh.
Guys, I really appreciate you listening to me talk about the electric universe, because you all have been part of me doing the research. It keeps me like on the edge, on the need to. And I hope that you come and learn more about plasma cosmology.
Because this is up and coming now. This is the newest theory, and I think it's the one that fits with the model that's in here.
You know what's funny is it's been around the whole time.
I know.
And I want people to know this. Who invented gravity waves?
Well, who invented the gravity?
Gravity waves.
I don't know who.
Henri Poincaré.
I knew it was somebody different.
He published his work mere months before Einstein.
Wow.
So the way it's been like pulled this direction, trust me, the electromagnetic solutions for things have been around the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But what's new about it is now the equipment is catching up to where the satellites are finding this stuff.
That's what we need.
Yeah.
Let's see, one more comment here. Fascinating and electrifying from Melissa Begley. Thank you, honey. Well, we'll see you later with my little squeaky voice. I'm going to sign off. Kisses from Kentucky, you guys. Much. And I will see you guys later. And if you will hit that